host Locke, and this is the podcast where we drink, smoke, and bullshit about the life of a historic criminal. Now we're talking outlaws and gangsters. We're not going to cover too many serial killers. That's just a little bit dark for me, and this ain't no true crime podcast. Honestly, you can't call this a history podcast because I'm no historian. I'm just a history fan that does some research and bullshits about it with his friends. So speaking of my friends, let me introduce you to my co-hosts. First with us today, we got Jbone.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And also with us today, we got Tank.
Giving thanks to stories about bad guys this week, y'all.
All right, welcome to the show, fellas.
Thank you.
We always cover old nations pretty hard on the show. I feel like we deserve a sponsorship or something.
Some swag, some hats, t-shirts, anything.
A tweet. So
a boss tweet.
If you could hook us up. But Jay, why don't you go ahead and go first with us today?
All right. You mentioned Old Nation. Everybody's quite familiar with that brewery, thanks to our podcast and their great brew. I got a Boss Tweed double IPA.
Definitely a favorite on the show.
Hard hitter.
Oh,
nice.
For sure, a hard hitter. But yeah, show favorite for sure.
And like I say to the nation, throw some hats and t-shirts and pens and just swag in general.
Well, normally I go last, but I figure I'll jump in next because I also have a Boss Tweed, but I got the Boss Tweed Guava, which is a limited edition beer. But we know Tank always brings the fire when he comes through with some beer, so he come through with that limited edition shit. So we grabbed one of those guavas and we did us a little brew trade. I know you said you prefer the traditional Boss Tweed to the guava, right?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't kick the guava out of bed. I'd give it a solid 4 out of 1 to 5, but I'm still saying that the original's the champ. But yeah, I mean, it was light on the flavor. It wasn't overpowering. It wasn't like guava.
That was going to be for both of you. Tank, you had it, and he's sampling it now. Is it too orangey or guava-y or like I'm not a big fan of a lot of the fruitier beer, but like Sam Adams Cherry Wheat is just the right hint of oaky cherry. Like it doesn't taste like Kool-Aid mixed with beer. Yeah. So what do you think, Locke? What's the guava rating? That alone, like is it real prevalent?
You could definitely taste the guava, but it's not overbearing.
Right on.
I like it a lot. I see what you're saying about the Boss Tweed being the A1, but I feel like that's like Rocky versus Creed. Creed is a great movie, but you know, you love the original.
Up every single day having steak, having like a tomahawk every day, you know, and then you go to your cousin's house and his mom, it's still a steak, but it's like a New York strip. It's like, yeah.
And we know how I analyze stuff. I guess the way I look at it is, you take a beer like a Tweed and then you want to throw guava at it. I'm looking at it like it should take the Tweed to another level. It was almost its own deal. The fruit flavor kind of almost took away some of the depth that the Tweed has on some of the kind of like the spicy undertones of the Tweed. But anyways, like I said, as you could tell, just overthinking it way too much. But I mean, I did enjoy it, just not as much as I thought I would when I bought 2 4-packs of it.
Yeah.
That's like $30 worth of fucking beer too.
Yeah, it was my birthday week, so I figured, hey, it was okay, you know what I mean? That was my little birthday gift to myself, and then probably ended up giving myself about 3 more birthday gifts of beer throughout the last 2 weeks. So,
well, that is the gift that keeps on giving, though. Like
yeah.
it.
No, I get what you're saying, though. I think Cancer called it like complex. You know, it's got a lot of complex flavors. The Boss Tweed does, and definitely, I guess the guava takes from that a little bit because the guava is not overbearing, but it's overbearing enough to take some of the complexities of the different flavors, I guess.
Yeah, because the Tweed, like I mentioned, like for people that haven't had it, it is a hard hitter. Most IPAs are. But this, like you hit on, you said overthinking. Not really. You were right in there because it's got a lot of spice notes and nice endings.
Yeah, it's one of them things that just, you know, every time you drink it, you could find another flavor that you like about it.
Yeah.
Tank, before you get into yours, I want to take a guess first. Is that a Holmes?
You're right. You can always tell their art is, you know, next level. Holmes is from Ann Arbor, which, I mean, you know, is one of my favorite cities in the world. So, anyways, we got right. We got the Mingle Sour Double IPA, and it says this brew contains strawberry, cherry, plum, vanilla, cinnamon, and milk sugar, which is a whole lot going on.
What's it taste like?
It's good beer. You can tell that it's strong. Any sour double IPA's got to be up in the 7 to 8 range. I don't know the exact count. Good brew though, man. I mean, obviously we're fanboys here, those local brews, but this one doesn't disappoint.
All right, as always, before we get started, we got to make sure we thank Sixpo Sueno for letting us use his music in the intro, and then Cancer, who lets us use his music in the mid-roll. We're using his song Kings and Cannibals. You can follow him on Instagram at Eyes Bleed Defiance, where he does his artwork. He did our cover photo that you could see there. You can also follow us on Instagram at Bad Guy Podcast or TikTok Bad Guy Podcast. And if you have a hard time finding them, you can go to our website, Bad Guy Podcast, and you can click all through the links there. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. And the bad guy we're covering today is Tai Tho Huang.
This ain't negotiation time. This is Scarface, final scene, fucking bazookas under each arm. Say hello to my little friend.
A.K.A. David Tai.
Yes. Before we even get into that, it's clear where that's going. We've done that a million times with the Italian gangsters. You know what I mean? When you come over to America and your name is Tai Tho Huang, we're going to say, we like David.
Yeah.
Tai Tho Huang was born January 30th, 1956 in Saigon, South Vietnam, which is now known as Ho Chi Minh City. In his early teens, he would work as a middleman to help supply American GIs with drugs. Asia's a huge producer of heroin.
Poppy fields just outside the jungle, so like it's prevalent.
On April 30th, 1975, the fall of Saigon officially ended the Vietnam War. The communists took over.
Okay. He's 19 now.
America pulls out. North Vietnam wins. It becomes communist town. Like I said, they changed the name to Ho Chi Minh City. Huang's dad was taken by the communists to a re-education camp, but not before he was able to get Huang out of Saigon and secure him passage to America.
That's wild, man. I mean, re-education camps and that time of year, it doesn't seem that far away. I know it's getting in the 50 and 60 year range now, but you're like, wait, man, that couldn't have happened that close. Like, yep, nope. They were, and in some places of the world, it's still on that shit. You got to believe in our political agenda or we'll put you in a camp.
For sure.
Wild.
He moves to America. He moves into a Lutheran group home in Indiana, and he's the only Vietnamese person for quite a while.
I'm sorry, did you say where it was located?
Indiana.
Okay, Indiana. All right.
We'll be out soon.
All right.
So he comes over to America as a refugee, goes to Indiana, can't stand it. He's the only Vietnamese person. He stays less than a year, and then in May of 1976, he took $150 on a bus ticket and moved to New York.
That sounds like a Rod Stewart song.
I mean, and like if it's New York City proper, talk about a big time transition there, you know.
Oh, yeah. He's leaving the city that goes to bed at 7:30 p.m. to the city that never sleeps. Like,
this is what I'm used to right here. This is more like it.
So he adapted much better in New York. He was able to get jobs in Chinatown, working as a busboy.
Drug dealer. All the good, like what he did back home.
All the classics.
Yeah.
He'd rotate jobs, work multiple jobs, bounce from job to job, just anybody that needed somebody to work that day. At one point, he worked as a dishwasher in like the world famous Rainbow Room, which is like a high elite club in New York. It's actually now like a historical site. To me, that kind of sounds like the scene from Scarface, you know, where he's doing dishes across the street from that club.
Yeah.
I didn't come to America to wash no fucking dishes.
It's time to do the come up.
For extra money, he taught himself how to counterfeit watches. And
all right. That's the opposite. I thought it was going to go drug related, but okay.
He got so good at it, eventually built a small watch factory in his apartment. In 1978, he was able to get accepted to New York University. NYU. It's a good school.
Yeah.
He met and fell in love with a fellow Vietnamese refugee, and the two were married within months. She got pregnant soon after, and they both dropped out of school and got a small apartment in Hell's Kitchen.
It's the place to be, too. If you want to counterfeit watches and get rid of them, New York, I mean, I don't know.
Make them up in your apartment and go sell them right on the corner. Like it's a 4-minute walk to work, you know?
Don't get me wrong. It's been a while. It's been 19 years since I've been to New York City. But anyways, when I was there, like it was like, I mean, some streets were a free-for-all. You could just sell whatever you wanted right on the street. All you needed was a table and a chair, and you were in business.
Yeah, that never changed. Like you were there 20 years ago, and if you were there 20 years before that, and if you were there in the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
Barely able to support his growing family, working in restaurants, he started spending more time on Canal Street selling counterfeit watches. Now, Canal Street is the main market street of New York. So he'd spend most of his time, he'd stay up all night making counterfeit watches, and then he'd get up bright and early and go spend the day out on Canal Street slinging his counterfeit watches. Problem was, he gets out there and he realizes that's not open territory.
Oh, okay.
But he's got a good little business going, but this is like the dead middle of Chinatown, and it's controlled by all the gangs. So in order to in order to stay on the street counterfeiting watches, he has to start running with local gangs, making affiliations. And in 1983, he became a member of the largest Chinatown gang, the Flying Dragons.
Man, no wonder it cost me like $12 for 5 tacos back in 2001, because that poor taco shop was probably paying cover to some gang sell me their little bean and beef tacos. Me and my buddies were all appalled, like, how come a McDonald's combo meal is $10 here, but if you go 2 miles that way, it's normal price? You know, it's like, well, that's why, because even McDonald's probably had to pay cover cash.
Have you met David Ty and the Flying Dragons? That's why. Now, the Flying Dragons were the street wing or the enforcement wing of the Hip Sing Tong. All of the triad families basically are broken into tongs. So the Hip Sing Tong is one of the oldest ones. It dates back to 1904 in New York, but it actually originated in San Francisco.
Oh.
So that tong started in San Francisco. There was the huge tong wars in 1900s, which is one of those things I start doing research. Like I say the big tong wars, and you guys are like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I've done enough research over the last couple weeks of covering different guys that to me it's like, yeah, the Great Tong Wars of 1904. Dude.
And don't forget, like in 2004, the Tong song.
During the Tong Wars, they were known for their axe fights.
Oh, damn. And I mean, look, in these pictures right here, I mean, you bump into one of these dudes, man, it's like, it might be unassuming, or you might realize right away, like, fuck, I messed with the wrong dude.
Would they look every bit the Chinese counterpart of the Italian gangsters that we're used to seeing?
Oh, yeah, this guy right here, the Asian Fred Sanford, he could be like an honorary, I could see him with, like Uncle Al or something.
I mean, it's just like nowadays, man. I mean, I don't want to stereotype too much just by the way like people wear clothes or whatnot. But you might be able to tell that you done fucked with a gangster or somebody who's on the wrong side of the law. But back then, like, everybody was trying to dress up in their Sunday best is what I meant. Like, you could fucking accidentally bump into a dude and be like,
even
shit.
With his Asianness, is that not Humphrey Bogart?
I mean,
like, look here, punk. I'm gonna pump you full of lead. See?
Yeah, that's where you would get up and put on your 3-piece suit and go work on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, nowadays it's like you might be able to like make you a generalization from afar, but back then you're like, I mean, you really had to worry about who you were bumping into on the street. You know what I mean?
Well, that's that whole scene from Godfather where Michael and a baker, I'm not sure if it was a baker or a flour guy, but either way, he just put his hat down, flipped his collar up, and was like, here, stand like this. And he looked like a fucking gangster.
Yep.
Because it was tough to tell the difference. So David joins the Flying Dragons, and being a smart guy, he's got his own gig. He rapidly rises through, and he's soon allowed to run his own subdivision of the gang called the Vietnamese Flying Dragons. Not a lot of originality in the names.
That's how it was back then, man. For, the Flying Dragons ain't enough. Like, well, you could start your own, but you got to put Vietnamese in the beginning of it. Like, damn, man, it's not enough. I want to be a Flying Dragon. Like, nope.
One thing I wanted to mention. So the reason the Hip Sing Tong had the Flying Dragons is by now they had became the Hip Sing Association. So if you Google them, they're interchangeable. But the Hip Sing Association at one point was the Hip Sing Tong. But now, to move away from the criminality, now it's like a community organization group that focuses on like politics and, you know what I mean?
I gotcha.
It's like a community group. It's the same dudes, but
Yeah.
now it's not the Hip Sing Tong. It's the Hip Sing Association.
Didn't the Italian Mafia aren't they kind of doing the same thing right now too?
Exactly. How they got the family, and then they got the Lords of Flatbush that are just out there as a street gang doing that, that street level shit. But so that's how they had the Flying Dragons. Around this time, there was a heavy influx of Vietnamese refugees coming into New York. They were actually called, and I had to do extra research to make sure this isn't extremely racist, but they were called boat people. But they were literally called that because to escape Vietnam, they would throw them in boats and push them out, like kind of to sea, basically. And they would float around out there until a friendly boat from a different country would pick them up and then take them in as refugees.
Damn, man. And sometimes you think your life is at a tough juncture, but I had never decided to just jump into a boat with no motor and just take my chances out. I'm waiting for a friendly vessel to come floating by. So holy shit, that's wild right there, my friend.
The first article I read that says the boat people, I'm like, ew, you can't say that. Let me check another one. And then I start reaching and you start reading.
Fuck that. We're proud to be goddamn boat people. We made it.
Yeah. You know how fucking terrible that was? You better call me a goddamn boat person.
Son of a bitch.
You know what they called my cousins that didn't make it? Shark food. So boat people is not offensive.
Damn straight.
Now, these were primarily young men. So that was who was able to typically escape Vietnam. And a lot of it was because that's who the communists would kill. That would be the rising against you force. So a lot of the women and older men were able to stay. They would put them to re-education and then kind of use them to build their communist nation. But like all these of military age guys would be killed. So a lot of the family was, if you got a 16-year-old son and you're in, Saigon, better push that motherfucker in a boat out to sea. Or they might
Here they come with the AK-47, or you take your chances on the boat.
Right.
Well, I'm jumping in the boat then, I guess. Comes around full circle.
So you have primarily young men, but they have no family relations. There's very little Vietnamese women. It's like just primarily, gang age dudes with no families, no nothing. So they would come to the neighborhood and they'd hear about David Tai, and many of them would even seek him out. And he would always help out. He'd give them advice, help them get settled. He'd give them money, sometimes a place to stay. And a lot of these guys started to look up to him as like a father figure in the community. And then what made it worse is they're in a country, right? With no family. They just escaped a war-torn country. So you got that PTSD. You have no family structure. You're in this completely different American country. You come to America and we're like, for one, the Americans hated Vietnamese because of the Vietnam War, not realizing that we were also fighting for the Vietnamese over there.
Yep.
But, we're dummies, so we don't take that into consideration. We're just like, oh, Vietnam, my daddy was killing you guys over there. Like, no, my daddy was fighting next to your dad. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, but we didn't know that. So they just, treated them all terrible because of the war. So they would go to Chinatown, which is where they thought that they had some kind of
clout,
structure. They go reaching out for David Tai. But in Chinatown, the Chinese look down at the Vietnamese as less than two. So they were kind of like, all right, you can hang out in Chinatown. You are Asian, but we don't like you're not Chinese.
It's an easy decision, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? You gonna go it alone? You gonna try to find a little bit of brotherhood, a little bit of support, maybe some guys that are just like you.
You seek out David Tai. He's like the Asian fucking Simon Cowell. He's putting a boy band together, like.
While the Vietnamese Flying Dragons grew in numbers and wealth, they held a lower status than the Chinese members of the Dragons. They would refer to them as coffee boys, but then they would also use them for the riskiest and most dangerous jobs or the crimes with the longest sentence. So anytime they had like dangerous robberies, hijackings, murders, they'd be like, that's for the Vietnamese guys. But they were excluded from the most profitable rackets, which was drugs and extortion. So most of the Flying Dragons, they're doing drugs and extortion, and they're making money hand over fist. And then they'll like throw them like, hey, we need you to go take out this guy. Hey, we need you to go rob this thing. And they're like,
we
okay.
decide today we're going to rob a bank. You two, go rob the bank.
And you get your 30% off of it. Like, wait a minute, we're robbing the bank. Yeah. What do you mean we get our 30%?
Guys, I got this great idea. Who's doing it? Oh, that's why I'm here.
So they get sick of this over time. And by 1987, David Tai puts together a large enough crew and he made enough money that he said, fuck it. And he walked away from the Flying Dragons and took his guys with him.
All right. I was wondering if this was going to happen from right when they had to be called the Vietnamese Flying Dragons.
You can't be surprised if that happens, right?
I mean, way to get off on a good foot. Flying
you welcomed
Dragons.
them in, but said you guys have to have an asterisk by your name. Like,
yeah, it's not a good way to start off your business. Like right off the bat, like, hey, you can come in. We really like what you're bringing to the table, but you can't be with us. Like you're technically with us, but
and you can only do the shittiest of all shitty shit.
It's like the organized crime to a 1-year contract for a professional sports player and shit.
Let's see what you got, kid.
Yep.
David and his crew continues to grow. They continue to make more money. Begins to refer to his group as the Canal Street Boys. And then he got powerful enough that other Vietnamese street gangs started turning to him for help too. So he would bring on these other gangs out of loyalty, the Vietnamese gangs, because he knows like these guys are all having a tough gig. They need work. He would employ other gangs for protection, enforcement to extort local shop makers into selling his watches, or as watch assemblers at several small factories that he built in safe houses across Chinatown.
I like the name too, Canal Street Boys. It's almost like a slap in the face to the, to the flying dragons. Like, oh, you guys remember where you found me and made me join your gang? Well, now I broke off and I named that shit after the street you found me on.
Yeah, remember I had to be part of you to work this?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it goes back to it because chances are there's like that's what they called them in the local paper was the Canal Street Boys strike again with their fake watches. You know.
Those rascals.
I realized it after I said it. Like, yeah, that's what the fucking headline was.
So after a couple years, Canal Street Boys are building up, and he's getting a tighter relationship with all these other Vietnamese gangs. And then in June of 1989, David throws a big meeting at a Manhattan Japanese restaurant to officially organize his gang with all the smaller independent Vietnamese gangs, which they called Born to Kill, off of the poster of the helmet from the Full Metal Jacket, Stanley Kubrick's movie poster.
Okay.
So they would go by Born to Kill, but they'd also be known as the BTK. To make them sign up, David Ty passed around a contract that they all had to sign. Now, the contract said that they were not allowed to talk to cops. They weren't allowed to participate in any criminal activities that were not approved by the boss. They were allowed to leave the organization if they wanted out, but the penalty would be that they had to scrape off all their tattoos and leave the city of New York permanently.
Ouch.
So there was an out. It's not going to be pretty, but we'll give you one.
But that's better than most semi or organized crime because, like, when say the biker culture, they'll remove your tattoos, but there's no in any form. Like, there's the street gangs, Bloods, Crips. There's no retirement plan. There's no. You can leave if you want to, like, in a fucking coffin.
As Tony Soprano said, what are you, a hockey player?
Yeah.
BTK's bread and butter were extortion and their counterfeit watch operation. So he got to a point where he was buying bulk watches and having them shipped from Hong Kong. And then he'd rebrand them as Rolex, Cartier, and Gucci in his watch factories. Then his crews would force the Canal Street merchants to purchase his watches. So they had different techniques for it. One of them was obviously they just go in and be like, hey, we're going to kill you. And some of them would just fold. Sometimes they would just take the approach where the gangs would just come in and threaten to burn the place down. David Ty would come in and say, look, I know these Vietnamese guys. I can work with them. I'll tell them not to burn the place down. And in return, you just sell some of my watches here.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be a lot easier just to take a business approach to this? All you got to do is sell some watches, and I'll take care of the dirty work. You just sell some watches. Yeah, that's definitely Cartier. No, it doesn't match anything in their catalog, but it's definitely Cartier.
David Ty would later claim that in 1988 he made $13 million in watches alone.
Okay. I was going to ask at one point, like, geez, man, they must have been banking off these watches, but that answers it right there.
13 million, that's a lot of fucking watches.
Yeah.
Well, what you have to figure is Rolex watches, Cartier watches, they sell for
$12,000. So he's selling a knockoff for, like, I'll take a G or $1,500 a piece in 1988 or 1989 money. You know, 13 million, it might not be double, it might not be 26 million, but
I've really been off on the, I usually check the inflation rates automatically when
I'm going to say about 17.9 million would be 13 million.
What did you say?
17.9.
It's 29. It's actually 28.6.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, I said it wouldn't be double, which would have been 26. Like, whoa, it's over double?
More than double. Let me make sure I put 1988, not 1888.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1988 to 2020. Well, I mean, that was a time when being a millionaire meant something, you know?
I mean, yeah, I was going to say that's a good bit of inflation. Man, but still, I mean.
But still, you would think 13 million is almost 30.
That's 13 million in just watches.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were doing other crime in addition.
I wonder if that was their small time or their big time part of their whole intake of crime funds.
No, the watches was definitely their go-to.
Okay, all right.
I mean, they did a little bit of everything, but watches is where they made their money. He built watch factories. Like, that's intense. He brought in a gang, like, you need us on extortion too? Like, no, you work at the plant. Like, dude, I joined a gang, so I'm on the line.
Yep.
Like, hey, you're in BTK? Yeah, what's up? What do you do? I work on the line down there, stamping.
I'll put all the small hands on.
Hey, it's a different gang, all right? I can get out if I want. You know, it's progressive. They're not as. It's not like other gangs.
I make watches on my own time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, what we're going to do, we're going to take a smoke break, refill our drinks, and we'll be back in a minute.
Round here, animal ants wanna be king. with shackles to break out of. They cower solo but mob 'em and they crowd us. Spilling in the street with heat like hot lava. Pop bottles, molotovs tossed and rocks follow. Ominous disciples like vipers, they strike quickly. Come at me like an army, I'm tearing you down with me. Spit like a baron, rulers are bred like Kaiser. Roll with the goal and get beaten like outsiders. These amateur animals swing in the wrong jungle. Climbing the wrong vines mean these lions will snuff you. Concrete wilderness building our own structures. Writing our own order, appointing our own judges. Overthrowing authority, morally lack conscience. Fighting for survival with rivals with throat punches. Monitor the area carrying curved swords. Slither in the brush till we crush them with brute force. Men storming the harbor with armored attack armaments. Calling all guards to swarm them and skin their faces for ornaments. Order more troops to corner them, Agent Orange and mortar them. Kill them all, just destroy them and let your guy get to sorting them. Code of honor corroded as soon as it was awarded. Celebrations were thwarted before they could be supported. Rolling thunder bombarded them, flaming dart put a part in them. Separate and disarm them and send the bulls to the parliament. Operation Niagara, Viet Cong on the battle with landmines and grenades and flamethrowers to scatter them. Dear mama, this battle is harder than what we thought it'd be. Every part of me scarred, I'll be recognized when they mortar me. It's almost time to run, put on your army helmets now. You're running toward the sun with all your guns' defenses down. Flashes everywhere, the lights create an atmosphere. Water in your lungs, you pray for death, but life is here. You're about to die, face it, you're about to die. Zero sand in your glass, fuck it, you can't even cry. Put a dagger to your neck, just to keep yourself in check. Put a dagger to your neck, just to keep yourself in check. Everybody grab a side as you fight to stay alive. Dancing on a hand grenade so you can die and they survive. Silver bullets in the sky, dropping 7-second death. Scattering the children, run, rub until there's nothing left. Ashes in the water, sons and daughters hold their flags up high. Wallow in the harbor as the military tanks arrive. Penetrate the border with disorder like an animal. Every war has the honor of turning kings into cannibals.
Before this was a show, it was me bullshitting with my friends. And turning it into a podcast was as easy as going to anchor.fm. But first of all, it's free. And it has all these creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And you can add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. Anchor will distribute your podcast to all the major distributors, including Spotify, Apple, and Stitcher. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now back to the show. And we're back.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So when we left off, David Ty had built up a big-ass gang and made a ton of money and counterfeited watches and working in the extortion gang. Under Ty's leadership, BTK became a Chinatown powerhouse. Since they were Vietnamese, David didn't think they had to follow any of the traditional rules or laws of the power structures of the Chinatown criminal underworld. So he was kind of like, whoa, I don't really got to do what the Hip Sing Tong says because I'm not Chinese.
Yeah.
And they were very clear about that.
They had their chance.
Yeah. So he was like, yeah, I don't got to do that.
Well, hold on. Hip Sing Clan ain't nothing to fuck with.
With a large group of young men from war-torn country, they all had no family connections or connections in the neighborhood. They escalated their level of violence as their rackets grew. At one point, when they had a raid on one of their watch factories that had like $100,000 worth of damage, David Ty ordered a police car blown up.
You don't want to start warring with the law directly.
It wounded 2 police officers and 11 other citizens.
Well, real quick,
sure.
when he, like, it's kind of retro, like 10 minutes back in the cast, but when they broke off from Flying Dragons because they didn't want to be at the Vietnamese Flying Dragons, how well did that go off? Was there any, like, repercussions from that? Because it didn't seem like, because the story just flowed until now. But as we always got to beat that drum, when you start attacking cops, judges, or federal agents, I'm smelling Rikers Island coming up because, goddamn.
They don't like that.
So, but go ahead. I just wanted to be, I wasn't 100% clear if there was any repercussions from breaking off from the Flying Dragons. Because I already know, without you telling me the story, there's going to be some goddamn repercussions for throwing, bombs at cop cars.
Elmhurst Park, which is in Queens, there's a violent Chinese gang which they attacked a bunch of BTK members, and this resulted in a shootout with the BTK where a 12-year-old girl got shot. Then on August 5th, 1989, while standing in front of his shop on Canal Street with a couple BTK members, 2 Flying Dragons came up to David and they insulted him and spit it on the ground in front of him.
Uh-oh.
Which they said in their culture is a huge insult. And I feel like, some things cross cultural boundaries. I don't care what culture you are, where you're from, or what age you are or something. We all know.
Yeah, that transcends. So let's just clear that up for the world. Like in Russian, in Portugal, in fucking Canada, anytime you spit near a man's feet, that's the ultimate.
We all know.
That's the fuck you that I can't slap you right in your fucking stupid fat face.
Whether it's 2020, whether it's 1820, whatever.
1920, don't you spitting by my shoes? I know what that means.
Like when you were younger and they'd be like, oh no, burping in some cultures, isn't that, offensive because it lets you know that you enjoyed the meal or whatever. It's like, no, you spit at his feet. Like that's pretty, there's no, that's it. There's no
like
bird
that
lines
one
there.
not only is offensive in all cultures, that transcends cultures. Nobody that doesn't speak the other dude's language doesn't know that's a fuck you. Like, oh, what? Okay.
The guy, his name's Lan Tran, who was kind of his number one. Lan Tran pulls out a .38 in broad daylight in the middle of Canal Street and shot one through the side of the head and one through the back, killing them both.
Ooh.
Don't spit near my boy feet.
Talk about eye for eye, tooth for tooth, huh?
Right?
So, yeah, you raid his shit,
Hey.
which is totally illegal. I'm blowing up the cop car. You going to spit near my feet? I'm blowing off heads like...
Broad daylight.
Yeah. By the time the police arrived, all the shops on Canal Street were closed, and no witnesses agreed to make a statement.
Wow. Canal Street boys indeed.
Well, on the corner of the city that never sleeps, like, hey, there's a million of you. Before cameras were everywhere. Nothing.
Nobody. They began committing crimes and robberies, including establishments under control of other criminal organizations. They said, we don't got to follow the rules because we don't answer to anybody, so we can hit whatever we want. On one occasion, the BTK robbed an underground gambling den, which included several Tong members. They were all robbed of their money, credit cards, jewelry, and stripped. By now, everything's kind of, people's getting shot, just getting robbed, little kids getting shot.
Cops getting attacked.
So to put an end to the chaos on the streets, a Chinatown hip sing Tong boss, a guy named by the name of Benny Ong, a.k.a. Uncle Benny. He's also called Uncle Seven. Benny Ong was referred to as the godfather of Chinatown, and he reached out to Tao to attend a Kong Su, which is a sit-down.
Truce.
So he invites him to a sit-down. A neighborhood seen it as a show of respect for Tai to be invited for a sit-down. David Tai refused to respond or acknowledge the invitation.
Oh, you don't even go to you got to go to the sit-down.
Well, he refused to meet or negotiate.
My man, I'm against you on blowing up the cop car, but man, when you get called, you get called. That's part of what you signed up for.
You better be ready for the war that comes after, right? Or
this David Tai, he's on his own accord, though. I like it, though. Like, there's some real rebelness here. Like, even in the construct of organized crime, he's like, you know what? You said the word progressive, like he really is.
Yeah, at the beginning when we started, and then he eventually mentioned, hey, he's building his numbers up. I was like, well, this is a intriguing character, especially to break away from the historic,
more powerful.
The Asian, family, like he said, from the early 1900s, and then just to be able to come in a relatively short amount of time and break off independent like this. Yeah, man, he's got some juice behind him so far.
So Uncle Benny didn't like that.
I bet he didn't.
But David Tai still had a good operation. Hip Sing Tong opted to take out one of Tai's top lieutenants, a guy named Ving Vu, who was gunned down on the street corner at 1 a.m. while leaving a massage parlor.
Keep him with the respect, though. I would think, like, Uncle Ben would have wanted to take out fucking David. Because at this point, he's not making money off the watches. This dude already broke off from them. That's a mad note of respect to not be like, well, fuck him. He's done. He wants to refuse my sit down. I'll take out one of his best friends. Like, he's safe.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe they are really scared of.
Well, not
David.
scared. I don't think they're scared of his numbers, but like he has the numbers to go off.
They don't want the war.
Yeah, they don't want the fucking heat.
That's like Sun Tzu, right? It's not in every war that you win. It's in not having to fight the wars if you don't have to.
Yeah.
So even if you could beat them, like, is that a fight you want to fight?
Yeah, I think the Vikings kind of follow the same kind of, like, you got to pick and choose you don't want to fight just because you know you can win, because you don't.
Well, because you're always going to, even in the most landslide one-sided, you're going to have losses. There's no shutout in war, there's nobody raids and not gets one of their own killed. But like, you cut the snake off at the head, why didn't he just kill David?
I think he still wants that watch money, bro.
Well,
I mean, 13 million a year is 13 million a year, right?
Well, let's talk our times. It's 30 million, like, basically. So.
And you don't even want to show up for the fucking meeting, man. I'm Uncle Benny. You know how pissed he had to be? He's sitting there like,
hey, I push you guys off for another month. It's another million. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to keep clocking my cash all to myself.
So David Tai is furious. He throws a 2-day funeral for Ving Vu through the streets of Chinatown, up and down Mulberry Street, and then down Canal Street, which they put him in the hearse on Canal Street, and they walked the procession with banners that read BTK.
And I just love the banner. You know what I mean?
It's
like they're like a fucking leisure club or some shit. Like there's not even there's no way you can get out of that one. Like, wait, are you part of the BTK? No. You're not with the Canal Boys? No. Well, then why were you marching up this fucking street with this crudely made banner that says BTK Canal Boys and shit? Maybe that's why there's only like 6
with Chinese guys written in Chinese guys' blood. What they're doing too, like, you think, like, what I think a lot of people when they hear it are gonna get lost on a 2-day. You have Cousin Johnny laid out for 3 days and the funeral's on the 3rd day. They didn't have a 2-day funeral. They have a 2-day. We're walking his casket up and down. We're having a funeral procession for 2 days. We're just passing this Stanley Cup around, dude, for like, for 2 days. Now that's just to piss Uncle Ben off, like, hey, look at this. Here we go. Here he comes. He's coming back. You thought you shot him when he was gone? Here he comes. Look.
Okay.
This is the Ving Vu party, bro.
Yeah.
And see,
all day,
it's
every day.
rocking. Because at first, when he said that, I initially, like, yeah, but all funerals are 2 or 3 days. Oh, the casket pass around for 2 days. Like, okay.
This is like
motherfuckers' arms are tired after this 2 days.
It's
like,
day 1.5. That's why there's only 6 people.
Well, look, they got 1,400. They got 14.
Got tired of it.
1,400 pallbearers. Like, they're out in numbers. They're like, hey,
who's shifted?
This my dude right here. Why don't you take a look?
So Uncle Benny doesn't like this either. So now they're just like, they're spitting on the ground in front of each other. Like, I'll kill your boy. Like, well, we'll parade through your town.
We'll throw his body in front of your restaurant 22 times an hour. Like, okay.
In retaliation, when the procession reached the cemetery, several Chinese gangsters disguised as mourners opened fire with Uzis on the crowd, hitting 5 mourners.
Damn.
Disguised as mourners.
Yeah, they strolled up in fucking black suits and
perfect disguise.
They showed
some Asian dudes at a big ass fucking rockin' ass 3-day like Woodstock festival Asian funeral.
You sneak right in.
I could see how nobody fucking seeked them out. Like,
only a small group knew something was wrong when a second BTK Boys, Canal Boys sign showed up. Like, some dude showed, like, wait, we only made 1 sign. Like, oh shit.
What do you tell the investigators? Yeah, they were wearing black, crying. Like, yeah, they looked like all the other people there.
I had a picture, but it wasn't for usage, and I put these on Instagrams. But they buried him with that flag on his.
Well, yeah, but not
on his casket when they buried him. And I feel like if you're gonna bury him with that, like, you could have got that airbrushed. For like what? I mean, you're making $13 million a year.
I feel
you
like
could get that airbrush for like what, like like $400, you get a fucking dope ass fucking Canal Boys flag. And shit.
Somebody at Gibraltar Trade Center could have did a way better job on that bitch than that.
So 5 people died at the funeral, 5 mourners.
No, nobody
wounded.
died.
Just
Yeah.
5 wounded.
Yeah.
Oh.
5
See,
wounded.
Uzis are pieces of shit. Of course, it's compact, but it's like the 25 of machine guns.
You know what's even worse than a Uzi?
A Mac 10.
It was big from our time. The Tech 9.
Okay.
Like the
Tech 9,
yeah.
Mac 10.
The Tech
yeah.
9 is like the worst gun ever. Like physically, it's a shitty gun, like cheaply made. But even just that design of at least the Uzi, that clip is in your hand, so it's not awkward. It's like comfortable to hold. You know what I mean? Like brass.
Yeah, the
knuckles.
Tech's like an old
something.
grease gun,
Yeah,
but
like
like
the
with a
whole thing-
modern
All the weight's on the front, but it's too small to hold with 2 hands. So you just got to hold a heavy gun that's front heavy. It's like the worst design for a gun ever.
Which makes me wonder, because there's a. Do you guys ever remember there's a rapper named Tech 9?
and
like,
Mac
wait,
10.
Why'd you pick a shitty gun to name yourself after? You must not have did any research into, like, did you actually like guns? Because you picked a poopy gun to name yourself after.
Terrible name. Good rapper, bad gun.
Yeah.
Way better fucking rapper than gun. Okay, people shit on revolvers all the time, right? But earlier, Lan Tran pulled out a 38 and dropped 2 motherfuckers on Canal Street.
You ain't kidding.
Shit,
The
you know
proof's
what
in
I
the
mean?
pudding, baby.
You know, these motherfuckers had Uzis at a funeral and didn't kill nobody.
It's like, look at that. There's people everywhere.
Yeah, he didn't kill one motherfucker. But the shooting started a big war between the Vietnamese against the Chinese. It's a long, bloody war. Many deaths on both sides. They keep duking it out. And despite the growing wars, David Tai had plenty of dudes. There's a lot of young Vietnamese guys that were young and angry and looking for work, and they were down. A lot of violent motherfuckers. You see MS-13, the Tiny Rascal Gang, whatever. You get a bunch of angry, war-torn motherfuckers in a small area.
Lord of Flies.
Yeah, without moms. When you put dudes together without moms,
Oh, hell yeah, man.
they start fucking the BTK and make it shitty better.
You ask a dude, like, after he gets done doing some regrettable shit, like, one of his biggest regrets would probably be like, oh, my mom's going to find out about this. But, you got some dudes where your choices, you got communism on one side of the ocean, or you got to float in your boat, wait for somebody to pick you up, and then you come over here. You're like, well, fuck, man, I just came from this country where we didn't have half the shit we got here, and my choice was either being poor as fuck and working every goddamn day on a fishing boat, or fucking coming over here and I can be a badass street gangster.
Hook up with like I said earlier, the Asian Simon Cowell and be in his
I get
all
shot.
Vietnam boy band.
I
Fucking
get shot. He's gonna carry me through the streets for 2 days and shit.
to piss off the guy that shot me, and then shoot up the funeral, and then fuck him.
So I could see why these dudes are ready to fight for him. They were like, well, I mean, we got something to fight for here. Ideologically, I mean, however, bad
Well,
it
and
was.
fight for it, because like what's their plan B for real? Like you said, there's no going back to communism. They'll just get killed. Like, what's their plan B?
So despite the growing wars, Thai continued to grow their criminal operations. So he starts working into robberies and extortion out of town. Selling counterfeit watches, he'd find the best jewelry stores. And he'd work out plans to set up big robberies. And then he would move in on big, like, tourist spots in other countries, similar like Canal Street. You're not going to, like, the Tiffany's place. Tiffany's you rob. But, like, Sam's Boston hotspot or whatever, there you go to, their Chinatown and be like, hey, so what do you need, like 10,000 watches? So they started doing, like, robberies and extortion nationwide. And then he started making inroads with Vietnamese gangs across the country. So he comes up with this big plan. He's like, I took all the New York Vietnamese gangs and made the BTK. I could take all of them across the whole country.
Either he's like a super charming guy that's easy to follow, or he's got a huge ego where he's like everybody. I mean, I did it in New York. I should be able to do it everywhere. But he's got something going there. I mean, that's how you take yourself from, local to nationwide, and from nationwide to maybe global,
So at this point, he started to reach out. He started to make connections with the American Mafia, too. So he started working out deals on bank robberies with connected groups, trying to work out deals with the American Mafia to work all the neighborhoods that they worked on the Italian side to work all the Chinatowns, basically. We do the Chinese side, and you do...
It was like a little franchising agreement.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we've already got the network in place.
That's what I think is crazy is they're like, So you're Italian, right? Yeah. So you get the Italian areas? Yeah. Like, okay. And you get the Chinese areas? Like, yeah, you're Chinese. No, we're Vietnamese, but we get all the Chinese stuff. And that's why the mob kind of dug them. They're like, well, that's ballsy.
You're Chinese enough for us.
I wonder how that was spun. That's interesting now that you said that, because I hadn't even thought about that angle of it. I wonder if that was spun into anything. Like, before we had a hard go with the the Chinese gangs. Maybe now the new wave of the Vietnamese guys, and maybe they're easier to deal with. Maybe we could
get our foot in the door, then take it over.
Oh, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that's all they're interested in.
That's always the plan, right? Yeah, man. Yeah, we'll take them over.
Ain't fucking say hello to the good guys or the okay guys, motherfucker.
So when they dug in for war, like his gang, like backed him to the fullest. So there's a writer, T.J. English. We got that book right there that we got, that Patty Whacked. He's one of the best writers out of New York. He did a book called Born to Kill on David Tye. In his book, he referred to David Tye as a megalomaniac who's seen himself as a modern day Mandarin prince.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm the fucking ego. I took the Vietnamese. We just came over here with shit, and now we're selling watches all over the country.
I can't really blame them though, because I mean, like you said, like how Americans at the time probably looked like anybody who was coming to America that was Asian was Chinese. You know what I mean? So I mean, I guess I can't blame him for his megalomaniacy.
Megalomania?
Yeah, so I guess I can't blame him for that, because I mean part of it was justified, but still that answers my question from earlier. I mean, I guess this guy just had a fucking crazy ego.
I'm the chosen one. I'm Neo.
A lot of his gang would hold him in supreme reverence. They referred to him as on high, which I seen. Okay, this is weird. I seen that on high means oldest and wisest brother, right?
Oh, okay.
But then when I looked it up, oldest and wisest brother is actually on Cho. On high is actually his second oldest brother, but like it's like a southern Vietnamese thing, because those were usually the guys that the first brother would be the guy that inherits everything, and then the other one would be the second brother. So the first brother got everything, and the second was the one that had to like fight for everything. So
totally fits.
I thought it was like our English, like on high, like what Christians call Jesus. On high.
No, I'm probably saying it wrong. It's ANHHAI.
Oh, okay.
Which is like on high, like two different words. But either way, it meant they dug them. So their commitment to him led to an unparalleled level of violence to maintain control of Chinatown and Canal Street. And they started blowing a lot of shit up. Anybody that even thought about throwing their money towards the Flying Dragons, they'd blow up the restaurant.
It's funny. It's because like the restaurant's name has bang in it, and
yeah, bang.
Like that. I love Vietnamese food though. Side note, it's delicious.
On March 10th, 1991, there's a jewelry store owner named Sen Ban Ta that refused to pay his extortion. It actually seems like he refused to pay his extortion because they robbed him. So they robbed him, and they were like, you know what? And you need to pay us extortion on top of it. And he was like, well, fuck that. No, you already robbed me.
I got nothing to... What do you mean pay you? I don't got no fucking product to sell no more, assholes.
You fucking robbed me.
You give me back my shit.
And he went to the cops. So on March 10th, 1991, Lan Tran shot him in the head in front of his 10-year-old nephew in his jewelry store.
Lan Tran shoots a lot of people in the head.
That's his move. 38, no Uzis.
Broad daylight in front of your nephew. He don't give a shit. But mob rules, right, guys? Like watching mob movies, mafia movies, organized crime movies. Even all the way back to like middle ages, you don't kill a dude in front of a younger person who could possibly come back in the future and take your ass out, right?
Well, because that's who the movie's about.
Yeah.
Is that little kid that watched you just...
Yep, usually,
Michael Corleone traveling back to Italy to kill Don fucking Seach and fucking...
Right. Nice job, Lantran. You just created a flashback scene.
Way to go, dude.
Now, this is going to be the scene when this kid's Batman... He's going to remember that time. That
you had a chance at retirement.
And just
before,
like The Godfather,
no
now the Thong Song 2 is going to be way better than the Thong Song 1. So,
the whole time, as the violence escalated, there's again Nin Go. He was a robber, but he wasn't like a really violent kid. He was real young. Didn't have nowhere to go, and he was robbing. But they got super violent, and they're bombing shit, and he's kind of like, this really ain't cool. And you see, this place they're going to bomb is a Vietnamese restaurant. So he got kind of sick of David Tye, and he was like, hey, look, they're just down to do whatever, and we're just killing and blowing up everything. And I don't think that's cool. So he starts snitching and wearing a wire.
Okay.
And they signed a contract, and you're not supposed to do that. So they assumed nobody was wearing a wire. But
But you know, that's
breach of contract.
Asian culture, man. You know, it's your honor is your, you know, your word is your honor. You know what I mean? Like, it's honor means something in Asian culture.
He goes months wearing a wire, just collects tapes and all these people in the organization, and then he finds out that David Tai is going to blow up the Pho Bang restaurant. And he actually blew up a different restaurant that was the wrong restaurant. And he was like, that sucks, but we still got to blow up the original restaurant.
Not the first time on the podcast somebody's hit the wrong motherfucker. They actually had the good pho. Good job, motherfucker. I like that restaurant.
So when he finds out they're going to blow up this restaurant, he's like, hey, we got to do something now. They're going to blow this place up. So the FBI, or not the FBI, it's the ATF. The ATF puts together an operation real quick, and they found 2 members of the BTK in possession of bombs within the vicinity of the Pho Bang. They didn't catch them actually blowing it up.
They caught them on the way to blow it up.
As soon as they found those guys with the bomb equipment, that gave credibility to everything else they had in the wiretap to get all their other raids. So they immediately raided David Tai's house.
So did David order the ATF be blown up?
So they raided David Tai's house in Long Island. He was found with a cache of illegal firearms, bomb-making equipment, and a counterfeit watch factory in his basement.
This dude in a watch factory. I know it's their bread and butter, but you wouldn't. Henry Ford didn't have a small manufacturing plant under his basement in Dearborn. You know, he had a factory for making cars.
Once they caught David Tai, they caught 10 other members of the BTK leadership right off the bat. In addition to Ngo's testimony, they flipped several other members. And then with the leadership in prison, the Chinatown victims came out in mass to testify. So they had 24 witnesses from Canal Street that were willing to testify against David Tai in court.
All right.
I feel like they had to narrow it down to 24.
Open and shut, slam dunk. Yeah. I mean, whatever you want to call it, it's done.
Well, that's crazy because you think about it. At one point, they were killing people on Canal Street and everybody shut down their store. I feel like that's Uncle Benny, right?
That was local David Tai, though. That was when I was part of the community and stuff. That was before I decided to take this franchise nationwide and start recruiting from far and long. Any Chinatown in the country, you're now under David Tai's control.
It was a nice little homie operation. It was local, you know. We should support local.
Yeah,
he was the old nations.
Yep. Did you sell out to Miller?
In the end, 7 members of the BTK were convicted on racketeering charges. David Tai was convicted of 14 charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. David Tai and all the leadership went to jail. Now, the BTK is still in existence today, and it's actually still nationwide, but it's primarily like a street-level gang.
Oh, okay. All right. You know? So the name is still around. It's just
not the same operation.
I gotcha. It's probably not as organized now. It's probably more, you know, they make their own decisions from geographic area to geographic area.
It's like the Kimura style in the mob, when instead of you having a consistent membership, when you start working in clans, you all just kind of it
wasn't the same since David Tai went down.
The most recent news would have been in 2020, April of 2020. David Tai, who's now 64, petitioned for critical release, citing health concerns related to the coronavirus pandemic.
Oh, okay. All right. So he tried jumping on that bandwagon.
Right. Who hasn't?
He's like, hey, I'm sick, bro. Let me out.
You guys want me to spread this shit around in here?
He said if they let him out, he'd go live with his family in Texas, his sister and his brother-in-law, and that he had no criminal connections. It was denied, citing that he was still a threat to the public. At 64 years old, he's currently held in a federal medical facility in Massachusetts.
And I mean, for the credit of that denial, who you kidding, David Tai? I mean, you came to this country, you didn't know anybody, you single-handedly organized one of the biggest Vietnamese mafia-style, organized crime syndicate-style gangs, at least I've ever heard of. So yes, you can't come out and go move down to Texas and pretend like you're not gonna fucking find a Chinatown down in Texas somewhere and start right back up. I mean, and we thought it wasn't capable, but we've covered dudes, you know, who on the podcast before who somehow come out the clink after in their senior years and just pick right up where they left off. I mean, it's not common, but it's happened.
Well, look, Sammy the Bull snitched on John Gotti, went into witness protection, got kicked out for starting an ecstasy ring, went back to prison, got back out of prison, and now he's on YouTube telling stories about it all. Like, what the fuck? Hey, Sammy the Bull. And it's weird because people would like Rat, and he is Rat. He snitched on John Gotti, but his career is so fucking deep that honestly, that's old shit.
Yeah.
Like John Gotti's story stopped there. He was like, "Oh yeah, I snitched.
Look,
I came up with Gotti, and then I left him in the dirt." Dude.
He's the opposite of somebody who's reformed. He's like, "Look, I was a snitch. I came back. I went right back into crime again. I'm true blue crime again. You know what I mean? There was a point when I was on the clean side of the law.
I was a double agent. I was tricking you.
I paid my dues now. How many years of being illegal do you got to do before people forget that one little snitching?"
I repaid my dues. I remade my bones. So that's the story of David Ty.
So say good night to the bad guy. Come on. The last time you're gonna see a bad guy like this again, let me tell you.
So now you guys haven't seen a picture yet. If we were to cast a movie about David Ty, who would you cast to play him?
When I thought of somebody who's charismatic, who might be able to pull this off, I thought of Randall Park from Fresh Off the Boat. Once we found out he's a megalomaniac, he was kind of in his own head, his ego. He obviously, it seems like he did a little bit more of the button pushing and less of the actual action. You know, it seems like maybe he didn't get his hands dirty as much. So maybe I think of him more as a talker, as a managerial kind of position. And it just seems like that actor could pull it off. He could maybe turn it on when it comes to time to be violent. Anyways, I think he could pull off the job of a megalomaniac, charismatic leader who can bring people together and convince them that they don't need to bow to the establishment of the Asian gang culture, and we can break off and be in our own little Vietnamese segment and have power. So that's who I picked as the guy from Fresh Off the Boat.
Jay, do you got an idea?
I don't know the dude's name, and it's like not as cheesy as it sounds, but the guy from The Walking Dead, Glenn.
Oh,
yeah.
Stephen Young, I think is his name. I could see that too. He's a good actor where he could do like the cool, like the smooth talking and shit, but he'd have like an angry vibe.
Yeah.
And for, that's a pretty popular show, so a lot of people have probably seen that show, and they'd be able to jump right in.
All right, so here's a picture of David Ty.
And I was going to go with the dude who played Harold from Harold and Kumar. I think now that I've seen this picture, it might have been a little bit more, physical feature-wise, maybe a little bit closer match to that guy. But, yeah, I know that what's in the look, but when I look at this dude, I wouldn't think like you're...
Mob boss.
Yeah, like you're all following
running
mob
anything.
boss.
So that guy's name is John Cho.
He's like, hey, I showed you guys the way of making these counterfeit watches and selling them. We've made $13 million in a year. Like, it doesn't matter how boyish I look. It doesn't matter how innocent I look. Let's go out here and take Chinatowns from fucking New York to San Francisco.
And it worked. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so now we got to rate him on the DEFCON scale. Now, the standard DEFCON scale is 5 to 1, 5 being the lowest, 1 being the highest. In the Bad Guy podcast, there's no good guys. So 5 would be Lee Murray, who's your coke dealing, bank robbing, kidnapper. And at 1, you got the Purple Gang, who's got multiple gang wars, multiple massacres, and they kill people on the streets. So on a scale of Lee Murray to the Purple Gang, where would you rate David Ty?
Well, I got all sorts of weird criteria with my scale. As I mistakenly called out earlier in the show, he did have a family. And for some reason that actually adds to my bad guy score. Like, wait, this dude was able to hold down a family and be a notorious national level crime syndicate head. That's fucked up. It adds a little bit more to the bad guy perception. I want to give him a 1. I can't. I wanted to give him a 3. I can't. So I'm ending up at a 2 because what was he responsible for? Himself? Not sure how much, but syndicating across the country, taking over Chinatowns, Vietnamese gang populations across the country. I mean, himself, after he was done, it's documented. His gang went to more street level stuff, independent, non-organized stuff. So when he was in power, it was the peak of the BTK. So I'm giving him a 2, and I can feel good on a solid 2 rating for him with all of that rambling as my reasons.
Well, as me too, I give him a 2. I couldn't give him a 1 because he wasn't pure evil. Wasn't the body count wasn't
Right
huge.
on.
But a compliment to him is like what you touched on a little bit is the unification and organizational skills, like kind of bringing all Vietnamese and Asianness together. And then the knockoffs are not a hell of a watchsmith on the business end, you know what I mean? Like that made them $30 million in the late 80s. So there was enough bad there to make him a 2 with the blowing up cop cars and being labeled a megalomaniac, wanting to just blow up shit, and then, you know, a control freak, but not pure evil, not enough to be a 1, so solid 2.
I think the world is kind of lucky that he was, if you put like a governor on a race car, I think the world's kind of lucky that he was confined to the Vietnamese flying dragons as a small gang, because if he would have been in charge of a country or something, he's like one of those dictator dudes that try and rally a troop and take over the world. People love him, and he just keeps thinking, just grow. His people seem to love him, and he seemed to feed off that, but like in a violent way.
Yeah.
Like, where he came from in Vietnam and not far from there, like fucking Cambodia and fucking Laos and shit like that. That shit was...
That's what the leaders of them countries were. They were just
they were fucking like crazy
best
motherfuckers
dude in the
like
village,
that. Yeah, but they took over the whole goddamn country.
It's funny because he didn't want to be... Like, I know his pops sent him away and shit, but he didn't want to be a part of communism, but he was almost... I guess he wasn't really a dictator per se. Like, I keep saying progressive. The one progressive thing I keep on mentioning is that, like, well, if you want out, it's cool. We're just going to scrape your tattoos and you can't come back to the city. Like, that was as progressive as it got. Other than that, he wasn't trying to meet up with Uncle Ben. He wasn't trying to take progressive steps towards, like, hey, no. It's like, no, motherfucker, I came here. You had your chance to be progressive yourself and let me be part of your gang and we live peacefully. I got my watch trade. You got your whatever trade. We, formed like Voltron, but you got your chance. I had to separate and make my own shit. So anyways, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt your score? My bad.
No, I think, I think I go with the 2. I don't think he killed a lot himself, but I think he commanded a lot of violence, and I think that's kind of the same thing to a point. Lan Tran would probably be closer to a 1, because he was just down to fucking kill whoever, wherever.
It's pretty prevalent in the story. It's there, just not enough of it. There was compliments to him. There was much like the business sense, the wanting to run the watch thing, the more than just being pure evil, like the organization of the Asian gangs coming together. He had like somewhat of a good head on his shoulder, but just not to take away from the badness, because we all gave him a 2, but just this much less violence. He's leaning. It's a heavy 2. It's almost up there at a 1.
Yeah,
but like,
if he was more violent himself.
Yeah,
I think he did have that. Is that he was kind of
just even one incident where he put the fucking ink pen through somebody's eyeball or something like that, like ice pick or something like. Okay, you would get it.
Yep.
All right, so we'll call that a DEFCON 2.
Take it to DEFCON 2. You heard that, gentlemen? DEFCON 2.
All right, before we go, you guys got anything?
No, I like the story this week, and just thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, this is Say Hello to the Bad Guy. Thanks for coming, and thanks for listening.